guys check in. We're going to give it a couple of seconds for the YouTubes to do their thing, because I assure you that it's not working just yet. Obviously, this is going to be for my replay crew. This is going to be about what's basically happening with Harvard, the administration. What's basically happening with Harvard. Yeah, you just missed the entire intro. Hold on a second here. Everything is going to be acting crazy. There we go. All right, so it looks like I am live. Make sure you guys check in and say hi. I will say hi back. If you add your questions to the channel or to the chat, I will be happy to answer them. And for the replay crew, obviously this is an instantaneous link, so you should not have to worry about it. I am going to be putting this out through several Discords. Where are we at here? Let's see here. Live now. And let's go ahead and let's add something to that. Up there. There we go. Interesting. There we go. All right, so we should have a few more people dropping in here, little by little, piece by piece. Russell Brand seems to be like maximizing his time before prison, but that's okay. I keep getting these notifications on my phone. So like I said, once again, you're here. Make sure that you say hi, and I shall say hi back. And if you don't know this, the way we do this is I talk about some stuff, you write about some stuff, I talk about the stuff that you wrote. Also, if you could, hit that thumbs up. It's free and it's good for me. All right, so getting right down to it, there's the relationship between the White House administration and Harvard University has been marked by significant tension. It's primarily centered around federal funding and allegations of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism on their campus. What I've done is I've come up with kind of a detailed overview of the background and current events based on available information. And I'm going to kind of present it with a critical perspective that avoids assuming the validity of any single narrative. Now, with that said, the background is that, Harvard University, it's one of the largest recipients of federal research funding among U.S. universities. It relies heavily on grants and contracts from federal agencies like the Department of Education, what we got here, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and the Department of Health and Human Services. These funds, they support a wide range of academic and scientific endeavors, from medical research to social science studies. Now, historically, federal oversight of the universities has included compliance with civil rights laws, such as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in programs receiving federal assistance. Now, in recent years, the elite universities, including Harvard, have faced scrutiny from various administrations over issues like campus protest politics, diversity initiatives, and responses to, where are we at here? Various responses to allegations of discrimination. The current situation escalates these tensions with the Trump administration. In its second term, beginning last January, taking a particularly aggressive stance towards universities perceived as failing to address anti-Semitism or aligning with certain ideological priorities. Now, we're going to get into the current events here in a second. Looks like Jocelyn A., what's up with those Arab channels selling knives? What the hell are you talking about? Worst troll ever, bro. Come on, you can't troll a troll. Come on, come up with something better. All right, so for the other people that are actually paying attention, so the current events, the following points, I'm going to make some points that are going to outline key developments in ongoing situations between the White House administration and Harvard as of today. Where's troll? I'll send you a link to it. No, we're good, bro. I don't need a link to any of your crazy ass stuff. Anyway, so one of the big things is federal funding review and some threats of cuts. So in late March, three federal agencies, the Department of Education, HHS, and the General Service Administration, announced a review of over $8 billion in multi-year federal grants and $255 million in contracts awarded to Harvard. This review was framed as part of an investigation by federal task force to combat anti-Semitism. You know, it's kind of focusing on on Harvard's handling of alleged anti-Semitic incidents. You know, particularly in context of the pro-Palestinian protests on campus. Now, the review kind of marks a significant escalation from previous threats. You know, following the administration's earlier decision to cancel $400 million in funding to Columbia University over similar concerns. Now, Harvard's funding, which constitutes a substantial portion of its research budget, is critical to its operations, and any cuts could have far-reaching consequences for the faculty, students, and ongoing projects. Now, April reports indicate that the administration had frozen approximately $2.3 billion in federal grants and contracts to Harvard, citing the university's refusal to comply with specific demands. This action was described as unprecedented and raised concerns about the politicization of federal funding decisions. Now, the backgrounds, they're you whatever, dude. You know, with the background finish, you know, what's the White House actually asking for? So on April 3rd of this month, the administration sent Harvard a letter outlining conditions for maintaining its federal funding. These things included eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, banning masks at campus protests, implementing merit-based admissions and hiring policies, effectively rejecting race or gender-based preferences, cooperating with the Department of Homeland Security on specific matters, and auditing the viewpoints of students, faculty, and staff to address alleged ideological basis or bias. Now, the president of Harvard, Alan Garber, he responded yesterday, rejecting the demands as an overreach of federal authority and a threat to academic freedom. Let's see here, authority, academic freedom. Garber argued that the conditions constituted direct government regulation of the intellectual conditions at Harvard and were not solely aimed at addressing anti-Semitism, but rather at imposing ideological conformity. He emphasized that Harvard would not surrender its independence or constitutional rights, signaling a willingness to legally challenge the administration's actions. Now, the administration's demands followed earlier actions by Harvard to address anti-Semitism concerns, included spending a public health partnership with Birzeit University in the West Bank, suspending a religion, conflict, and peace initiative, and its divinity school, and banned the undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee from hosting campus events. These moves were perceived by some as attempts to appease the administration, but failed to prevent the funding review. Now, the reality is there's a lot of money being thrown around, and that money is your money. That is your taxpayer money. I don't understand it. I'm going to keep saying it over and over. I don't understand how we're giving a college $1 billion, $2 billion, $2.9 billion. I don't understand how that's happening. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Maybe I need to start a tiny college and call it the College of Common Sense and get the government to give me $1 billion just cuts. So it's a little alarming, and it should be alarming to you as well. Then you phallus. Yeah, I love Josh. Josh doesn't have the nuts to type dick. I'm not a dick. How am I a dick? Because I didn't want to let you post the link to sell your cheap knives. Anyway, So campus and public reactions, they're kind of important. So faculty and students at Harvard have organized to resist what they see as federal overreach. Over 600 faculty members signed a letter condemning the administration's action and urging Harvard's governing board to defy the demands. A protest on April 8th outside of Harvard Hall drew around 300 attendees, calling for the university to protect its autonomy. Now, alumni groups such as the Coalition for a Diverse Harvard expressed support for Garber's stance, framing it as a defense of academic freedom against the bullying and authoritarian whims. Former President Barack Obama also publicly backed Harvard, praising its rejection of the administration's demands as a model for other instructions. Critics of Harvard's response include some administration officials argue that the university's refusal to comply reflects on an entitlement mindset and a failure to uphold civil rights laws. They point to alleged anti-Semitic incidents during a pro-Palestinian protest as justification for the funding review. Now, the broader context and other universities being involved, Harvard is not alone in facing federal pressure. The administration has targeted other elite universities, including Brown University, that receives $510 million that has been paused. Princeton, that receives $210 million that has been suspended. Cornell, $1 billion got sent to Cornell, and that has been frozen. Northwestern, $790 million, and they're doing this over similar allegations of anti-Semitism or non-compliance with federal priorities. Now, Columbia University, after initially resisting, agreed to some of the administration's demands, such as altering protest policies and reviewing DEI programs, and they did this in an attempt to restore its funding. This decision led to significant backlash, including the resignation of the interim president. Now, Harvard's defiance contrasts with Columbia's approach, positioning it as a potential test case for how universities navigate federal pressure. Now, the administration's actions align with border policy goals, including executive orders issued in January and February that impose moratoriums on certain federal grants, cap indirect cost rates for the NIH grants at 15%, and ban diversity programs in federal agencies. These policies reflect a conservative push to realign higher education with specific ideological objectives, such as realign higher education with specific ideological objects, such as reducing the influence of woke ideologies. Now, the legal and political developments, and I'm just going to keep going through this because no one's posting, and that's okay. The legal and political developments are that the American Association of University Professors filed a lawsuit on April 11th, challenging the funding cuts to Harvard, arguing that the administration failed to follow required procedures under Title VI, such as providing formal notice to the university and Congress. The lawsuit contests that the demands are overly vague and not directly tied to addressing discrimination. The Massachusetts Attorney General, along with 21 other states, filed a separate suit on February 10th to block the NIH indirect cost rate cap, highlighting the potential harm to research institutions nationwide. Politically, the situation has sparked debate about the balance between federal oversight and academic autonomy. Now, critics of the administration argue that its actions represent a coordinated effort to punish universities for perceived liberal bias. We all know that universities are liberally biased. That's not what this is about. While supporters claim it's a necessary response to unchecked anti-Semitism and ideological extremes on classes, or on campuses. All right, so I'm getting nothing in the chat. So I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, and I'm gonna go into the critical analysis. And with that said, the situation raises complex questions about the role of federal funding in shaping universities or university policies. You know, on one hand, the administration's focus on anti-Semitism stems from documented incidents of harassment and discrimination on some campuses, you know, particularly during protests related to the Israeli/Hamas conflict, right? Ensuring a safe environment for all the students is a legitimate concern, and a federal law obligates universities to address such issues. On the other hand, the breadth and specificity of the administration's demands, particularly those targeting DEI programs, protest regulations, and ideological audits, suggest a broader agenda that goes beyond civil rights enforcement. You know, these demands could be seen as an attempt to leverage financial power to enforce ideological conformity, raising concerns about academic freedom and institutional autonomy. Now, Harvard's response, while framed as a defensive principle, also reflects a pragmatic considerations. You know, the university's $50 billion endowment, that's not government. An endowment is when people are giving money to these universities. So this Harvard's $50 billion endowment provides a financial cushion that smaller institutions lack, potentially allowing it to withstand fund cuts or legal battles more effectively. However, the loss of billions in research funding would still disrupt critical programs, affect faculty retention, and limit opportunity for students. The administration's action also risks setting a precedent for future interventions, where federal funding becomes a tool to pressure universities to align with priorities of whoever holds power. Now, you know, the contrasting approaches of Harvard and Columbia highlight the difficulty or the difficult choices universities are facing right now. Columbia's concession preserves some funding but alienated parts of its community, while Harvard's defiance invites financial and legal risk but rallies support from those who see it as a standard or a stand against authoritarianism. The outlook of this standoff could shape the relationship between the federal government and higher education for years to come. Now, once again, I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to go and roll on to the conclusion. So, as of today, April 15th, 2025, the situation between the White House and the administration and Harvard remains unresolved, with significant implications for both parties. The administration's review of Harvard's federal funding, coupled with demands for sweeping policy changes, has escalated into a high-stakes confrontation. Harvard's refusal to comply positions it as a focal point in a broader debate about academic freedom, federal oversight, the politicization of higher education. Legal challenges and public reactions will likely influence the next steps, but the lack of a clear time for resolution suggests that tensions will persist. All right, so for those of you that did hang out and did put something in the chat, I want to thank you guys. As usual, if you guys like what I'm doing, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up on the way out the door. And yeah, that's going to be about it for today since no one wants to talk. Stay safe, have a great day, and I shall see you when I see you. Bye-bye.